Welcome back to Cards and Comics. So today I want to talk about a major change in how I'm going to collect from here on out for the foreseeable future. I've mulled it over for a long time, and really going to the National solidified it in my brain and in my soul what I should be doing. And if you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll notice that the vintage mail days are a lot further and fewer in between. Besides Clemente and maybe Maze and a few of my player collections, I haven't been just picking up the random Hall of Famers and just random vintage like I used to. And this has sort of been an ongoing trend for me for a few years now, actually for about 2 years. And I finally decided at the Albany card show last weekend to just rip the Band-Aid off and go for what I'm really collecting and go for it in a bigger way. And to do that, I'm going to have to change how I collect, and I'm going to have to probably sell inventory to exchange it for other inventory. Cards I don't necessarily don't like, it's just I don't find a need for them anymore, and replace them with other inventory and cards I really like. And I'm going to walk through my decision-making process and what I'm going to do this and why. But in a nutshell, I'm going to take most of my 50s and 60s and 70s collection outside of a few years and players and sell them. I'm going to probably convert that into cash to be used to buy other cards, things that I want more, and just think is more where I'm at from a collecting and what's really in my heart, the things that I really enjoy collecting. So I want to get into it. I've got a few things here, kind of a teleprompter right here to kind of remind me to stay on topic. So, but the thing that really started this whole ball rolling and to make the decision to sell a lot of my 50s, 60s, 70s collection was back in a year ago. I did a video where I talked about how rare 50s Hall of Famers were versus 60s. And, it dawned on me then that, that 60s Hall of Famers and 60s cards aren't rare, even in high grade. And there are some 50 sets that Hall of Famers are pretty rare in. Just in general, like getting I'd say a 50 Bowman Duke Snyder or, a Bob Feller, Warren Spahn, those kind of cards are much more rare in that set than they are in, say, 59, which is a pretty easy set to find today in high grade. But when I went to the National, it wasn't just the fact that there was a sea of 50s, 60s, and 70s cards. It was just like a tsunami of both high grade, mid grade, raw, any shape, size, grade you would want, any card you'd want was there to some level. And when I contrasted that with some cards I was looking for, mainly 90s cards or some pre-war cards, the vast divide in availability was so apparent. It was almost like stunning for me because I hadn't really noticed that in my collecting history before. It's just, I mentioned last year at the National how 90s cards weren't really there, and there was a lot more this time around. But compare that to the sea of 50s, 60s, and 70s cards, just the disparity was just enormous. And it made me really rethink going after some cards. And you'll notice that when I did do my pickup videos, I stayed within the 50s and 60s for, well, really the 50s, for my PC guys, Jackie Robinson. I picked up a Willie Mays card, a Hank Aaron card, a Clemente card. Those are my PC guys. But, I picked up a pre-war card. I picked up some 90s cards, Griffey, and that's sort of my new comfort zone. And really it's just about availability, rarity, and also just the designs appeal to me a lot more as I keep going into it. Pre-war, I don't know where I'm going to head yet. I've defined my 90s collecting really well. I feel like when I'm in the 90s space, I know what I'm looking for. I know what I like. I know what appeals to me. And the other thing that really spoke to me at that national was, for the first time in a long time, I found a lot of the cards from the 50s and 60s boring. Just it's like, maybe it's because I've been collecting them for so long that the designs don't speak to me anymore, that I've just seen them so often. But it was like when I'd find a pre-war set I've never seen before, or a cool, say 90s Grail card like the Barry Sanders Essentials Credentials card I picked up. Those were 10 to 100 times more exciting than seeing a 50, say a 57 Mickey Mantle, which, it just, I know, and people love those 50s and 60s cards, and I'm not here to say you shouldn't collect those, that those are not great cards to collect. I've been doing it for so long that I'm not sure I would say I'm bored, but it definitely isn't as inspiring for me to go out and find them and collect them. But does that mean I'm not going to collect cards from those eras? And the answer is no. It is not what I'm going to do. What I am going to do is, I've defined some areas of collecting that I'm going to continue to do. First off, I'm going to continue with my player collections. So Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Roberto Clemente, those players, those cards from the 50s and 60s, 70s are still going to be part of my collection. I'm not selling those cards. I'm going to continue to add to those collections. Jackie Robinson is another player I'm collecting. So I will add player collections. Chief Bender. Pre-war, I'm still defining how I want to do pre-war. I am deciding whether I want to do a few of the smaller sets, like the D-Long set, the Diamond Star set, or do I want to get into just a few more players? Like, I'm really, really, into a few players like Jimmy Fox. Grover Alexander is very, very intriguing to me. So, I might go into more player collections as well. The biggest thing that I'm looking at now when I look at my collection is, does it fill a slot? Like when I buy a card, is it got a space in my collection that's already existing that it needs to fill? So I'll give an example. Like whenever I buy a Griffey Refractor, I have a spreadsheet and a place for that card to fit into. It actually creates a check mark in my collection, right? When I buy a Chief Bender card or a Clemente card that I don't have, that's very easy to think. But even generically cool 90s cards, when I pick up a Topps Stars and Steel domed holographic Holo Gold, I'm putting that set together. A 98 Crusade, putting those sets together. So even picking up, a common from those sets still fills a slot in my collection. And so I'm looking at it from that perspective is, I want cards in my collection that fill slots. I'm just not wanting to accumulate cards just to have cards to have, if that makes sense. And I'll give you a real big reason why my collection is kind of the way it is a little bit. Why I have a lot of what I call random cards. It could be modern cards. I mentioned back in the day, I really did this big pirate collection, modern pirate collecting, that I've since quit doing. So there's still remnants of that collecting phase. And this is kind of a collecting phase. I am morphing into my next phase, right? The thing that I would say is, I've always, been a dealer to some extent. Maybe a very infrequent dealer. Back in Indiana, I was doing at least one show a month. In New York, I do 3 or 4 shows a year, mostly. Every quarter I do a show. And back when I was doing shows, especially more frequently, you had to have, I call, more generic inventory. If all I had was Roberto Clemente cards or pirate cards or whatever, A, I didn't really want to sell them because they were PC cards, but B, that's a very small target market, to sell. So then I would, have to have modern football cards. I'd have to have modern baseball cards to have inventory to move at a show, and to flip and make money, and to also buy cards from people and have this kind of much more broad, generic inventory. And that's the same way I did vintage. I said, I'll try to have, every vintage Hall of Famer from every set in the 50s and 60s, and that way I have this huge, broad, awesome set of cards that contains every Hall of Famer from every set from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and I'll have every cool card. And I've just realized, with the pricing now, I'll talk pricing in a second, in terms of what I'm going to be buying, but the price of modern, or say not modern, but vintage cards has gotten to the point where spending hundreds of dollars on a card of a player I don't really care that much about, from a set maybe I don't like as much as I like other sets, doesn't make a lot of sense to me anymore. So there are going to be other things, other factors that make me want to collect a card. So there are cards out there from the 50s or 70s that I just really like. And I'll keep those cards if I have them, or I might buy them if I want them. I think of like a 54 Red Heart Musial is one of my favorite cards. So if I find a super nice copy I will buy that just to have it because I like the card. I'm not going to quit doing that because, again, it fits a spot in my collection, in my brain and in my heart. I love that card. I want it. I don't have it, so I'm going to put it in my collection. But just a random Hall of Famer from a set like a 66 Joe Torre, I don't really see a need to have that card anymore. So I'm going to be selling those kind of cards. But the other big factor here is, for years, especially with Griffey, and I mentioned a lot of times I didn't want to declare myself a Griffey collector, or maybe even a 90s collector, because I knew the connotation was going to be this. At some point, you're going to have to dive into the deep end of the pool. For years, for the last 2 or 3 years, I've been able to acquire cards because they were in a certain price range, which I could afford without really getting extra resources, right? And that time is starting to really be done. Like that time period of collecting is over. I'm either going to have to really invest the resources to be able to pick up the cards I need, or I'm going to, just not complete the sets and collections I've started. So I have to make a choice. So my choice is, because the 90s, especially the 90s cards on Griffey's side, and even the vintage cards on like the May side, have gone up so much in value recently that, you can't just, I don't have the day-to-day resources just to have the money sitting around to pick up some of these really, really, really cool and awesome cards. I have to plan. I have to build inventory of money. I have to sell some things, and that's just how it is. Like you used to be able to, a couple years ago, even pre-2020, just buy a cool card of Griffey, and generally very few cards were out of my price range. Now a majority of what I need is out of my day-to-day price range. So I'm either going to have to sell cards, build up a bankroll, and when they come available, I have the resources necessary to make a play to go after those cards, or I just don't pick up a lot of new cards in those collections. And again, I'm looking at it like I've got all this inventory of cards just sitting around that I don't really care about as much anymore, versus getting these cards I really do like. They fit a spot in my collection, and they make more sense for me to have. So there are a few other areas that I'm probably going to hold on to. Certain years like 62 and 71 tops, I probably won't sell any or much of those cards because I really love, and those years are harder to get. Just like 58, certain cards from certain sets, like I mentioned, the 54 Musial, I won't sell because I love the card. So again, it's not like all or nothing. The The other one that I won't probably sell much of is my 8.5 collection. So, pre-COVID, most of my 50s, 60s, and 70s collection I was buying was in the grade of 8.5. I really loved that grade. Thought it was a good value grade, and so I'm going to keep all those cards I can, or majority of those cards. If it's something I really don't care about, then I'll let those go. The other one is I have a lot of O-Pee-Chee cards in baseball. I will keep those as well. For the most part, I'm not going to sell my O-Pee-Chee cards because, again, of the rarity and just I really like them. So it's not all or nothing, but I do have quite a bit of inventory, 50s through 70s, and in football and in basketball. I'm also going to sell, almost all my basketball if I can. So that's another collection that's going to go away. My graded pack collection that I just kind of put together, kind of pre-COVID, and really haven't added to it in a long time. That's probably going to go as well. So, and I'm going to take that money and I'm going to really look at getting into cool, high-end pre-war cards. I mentioned T3s before. I have a list of cards that are on my list, like the T3 Christy Mathewson. I'd really love to get, again, I mentioned the 54 Red Heart, but, on the Maze side of it, I got, pretty much after I get my 56 Maze, I have all the toughies. 53 Tops, 50, 2 Tops. I've got, 51 Bowman. I mean, all the really tough, Maze cards. Jackie Robinson, I need the 52 Top, so 48 Leaf. So, again, what I have left in those collections, Hank Aaron rookie card, that requires a lot more resources and planning to be able to get those cards. So that's what I'm going to be doing. It's, again, I call it a different phase. It's just where I'm at, the things I really like, and the things that really drive my collecting passion. And so I'm going to do it. And I think it's like ripping that Band-Aid off and selling cards. Because, when you sell a card, like I sold a 66 Pete Rose, it's like, I love that card. That's a cool card. I like that card. But do I like it more than the Griffey cards I've been picking up, the Willie Mays cards, the Jackie Robinson cards? And it's no, I don't. I'd much rather take that 66 Rose, sell it, and then buy something else that I really love. So that's sort of where I'm at. And let me know in the comments, if you've had similar thoughts, challenges, and changes to your collecting. And this is going to be a process that's going to take years, to divest and then reinvest. And, at some point I'll probably do the same thing in my comic book collection. That's going to be a phase 2. But I'm very excited because I like the fact that I've got this sort of inventory to fund other collecting, other passions. And so that'll be fun to see what I am able to convert one type of collectible into another. And that'd be great for you guys to follow along with me. So let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think this is kind of a dumb idea to sell, those kind of cards and buy 90s and pre-war cards and things like that? Do you think the 90s, is a fad? I personally don't. I think it's going to be another. It's going to continue to grow tremendously. At the National, there was the amount of interest in 90s cards was through the roof. So I don't feel like it's a fad or it's going to just go away. But let me know what you think, and I appreciate all the comments. I'll see you next time on Cards and Comics. Bye.